Here lies history at St. Paul's Oakland Cemetery. Here lie men who gave names to parks and counties, governors, and a U.S. Secretary of War. Here lie some of the oldest names in Minnesota, now joined by some of the newest. Hmong immigrant Dua Tao Yang, a much-loved mother and grandmother, is being laid to rest next to steamship Captain John H. Rainey, who gave name to a St. Paul Avenue and died a century before Dua's arrival from a refugee camp in Thailand.
We feel that this is a good home for my mother.
That Dua's oldest son, Chai, picked this grave in this cemetery as his mother's final resting place is no random matter. For in death, Dua joins hundreds of other Hmong immigrants whose black granite stones highlight a sort of afterlife integration taking place with St. Paul's founding fathers and mothers.
This has more of a Chinese feature to it.
Ku Vang, owner of 3 Hmong funeral homes, says Oakland offers much to those following Hmong traditions. In Oakland's rolling terrain, Hmong families see symbols of open arms and pillows that offer security and protection, while in the distance they see from Oakland the state center of power at which most Hmong graves are intentionally pointed.
The Capitol is right over there. That is the #1 anchor. You want your foot to be right on that Capitol so that you can step up and go.
One wonders what St. Paul's most prominent citizens from the past might say if they could speak to their new neighbors.
Might we suggest thank you?
September 1980, 1982.
Oakland Cemetery was in trouble in the early 1980s.
September 11th, 1980.
As the Hmong began arriving.
Here's a 1981.
Initially in county-paid burials.
We were down to probably maybe 180 internments a year. At one time, we did 600 here a year.
Oakland's North End neighborhood was changing from homeowners to renters who didn't have the same family ties to the old cemetery.
We just weren't generating enough revenue to offset the expenses.
But as St. Paul's newest immigrant families found a home with the oldest, Oakland Cemetery was reborn.
It's to the point where it's actually allowed us to do a lot of things that we weren't able to do before.
The ongoing maintenance and improvements in the cemetery do not go unnoticed. Hmong families come often to visit.
You know, our loved ones are all here, and I think it's just a tradition for us, I guess.
The hurt is still new for Shang Yang, who lost her husband to kidney failure in March. According to traditional Hmong teachings, each person has 2 spirits, one reincarnated after death, and another that lives at the burial site, the reason Hmong people often bring food for their dead.
They're still hungry somehow, we think, you know.
Hmong headstones tell detailed stories of a mountainous homeland in Laos left behind, and of deep patriotism for the country they were recruited to serve during the Vietnam War.
That's because they're very proud of that involvement, because they view that involvement as a catalyst to kind of bring us over here.
Across the street from the cemetery at Showan Rock Monument, Hmong headstones now represent 1/3 of sales.
We're going to etch the whole scene on the monument.
Chester Showan Rock, the company's 84-year-old third-generation owner, appreciates the Hmong adherence to traditional burials. Cremations are rare in the Hmong community.
I was going to learn our language, but it's too hard.
Once a week, Sauk Rapids artist Alan Breezy stops by with his etching tools.
There's hardly a stone that doesn't have a portrait on it.
He estimates 90% of the Hmong stones at Oakland bear his etchings. Stones becoming increasingly grand, as if inspired by those masterpieces set 100 years ago.
We don't have monuments in Laos.
Though in their homeland, Hmong graves were often marked with a stick or a rock, if at all.
Being here has really offered us an opportunity to memorialize who we are, who that person is, and to tell that story.
In the evolving history of St. Paul's Oakland Cemetery, here stands the story of America.
In life, we have to live next to each other and be good neighbors. In death, we have to live next to each other and be good neighbors, because we leave something behind.